Today on Pilot's Discretion, our guest is helicopter pilot and entrepreneur Chuck Surack. He talks about buying a helicopter company, what it means to run a customer-focused business, and working with great musicians. Pilot's Discretion starts right now. Hi, everyone. I'm John Zimmerman, and thanks for listening to Pilot's Discretion from Sporties. Visit sporties.com/podcast for today's show links and access to our archives where you can listen to every episode. And as always, we welcome your comments, questions, and guest suggestions. Send us an email at podcast@sporties.com. Today, I am joined by Chuck Surack, someone I have admired for many years because of both his business career and his passion for aviation. He is the founder and chairman of Sweetwater Sound, a business he started in the back of his VW bus in 1979, and has since grown into the nation's largest musical instrument and pro audio retailer. And a big part of that growth is Sweetwater's unique culture of customer service, which we'll talk about. But Chuck is also a pilot through and through. He has a commercial helicopter certificate. He owns an FBO and flight school. And 3 years ago, he purchased Enstrom, a company that has been making helicopters for nearly 80 years. Chuck, welcome to Pilot's Discretion.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here today.
So you love helicopter flying more than about anybody I know, and you're not a longtime airplane guy who got into helicopters. You are a helicopter guy through and through. So for our listeners, most of whom are airplane pilots, many of them probably never been in a helicopter, explain what it is about helicopters that is so fun and rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been around airplanes my whole life. My dad was a private pilot, flew in a Ronca Chief, and we've had airplanes and jets in our businesses, but I never was interested in the fixed wing thing. But about 18 years ago, I had a friend that flew his helicopter into a small little air show. And I said, "How cool is this?" And he says, "Well, you ought to do it." I said, "No, I'm 50. I'm too old." And he said, No. I know a guy in his 60s that got his rating." I said, "Wow." So I went home and worked on my wife. And that year for Christmas, she gave me an FAA logbook and how to fly helicopters. And I've been hooked ever since. And there's just something about, man over machine. And when you get in that thing and I'm sure it's the same in an airplane, but when you lift off with those three controls and you go, I'm actually doing it, it is just fascinating. And it was a big challenge, at age 50 to take on a new thing like this. And, since then I've flown literally all over the country in a helicopter, and I love flying it. I love the freedom when you're in the air. I mean, I know what it's like to be a pilot and to see the earth in a way that most people don't get a chance to see the earth. It's just an incredible, incredible experience.
Yeah, the freedom is really absolute. Flying an airplane, there's a lot of freedom, but I know when I transitioned into helicopters from airplanes, it was a whole nother level of freedom. You weren't even restricted to airports anymore. You could land almost anywhere, which seems like a small thing, but was a real light bulb moment for me. So when people find out I fly helicopters, the first question I always get, and I bet it's the same for you, is, isn't that hard? And my answer is always, it's not hard so much as it's unforgiving in a way, even that airplanes aren't. Helicopters are inherently unstable. Airplanes kind of want to fly. So do you agree with that, or am I underselling it and it's just plain hard?
Well, the running joke is a helicopter is 10,000 parts moving, trying to get away from each other. I'm not sure that's so true. I remember when I first started, of course, you learn with one set of controls and then another set of controls. And yeah, it is a little bit intimidating, a little bit hard then, but it's also, think about it, it's like riding a bicycle. If I told you had to balance the bike and pedal it and steer it and talk to your passenger on the back, that's hard at first. But in a helicopter, once you learn it, everything becomes second nature. And I don't believe it's really that hard. It's like learning to ride a bike and chewing gum and juggling at the same time or something, but eventually you can do it. I love the freedom of it. I can't explain enough about the freedom. And you're absolutely right. You can land anywhere. And I've landed in parking lots and fields and just literally all over the country. I was able to fly a couple of years ago around the Gulf of Mexico in a way that you wouldn't see it in a swamp boat. You wouldn't see it in anything else. And just a fascinating thing. And I went clear down to the bottom of Texas, just an amazing experience. I landed in the Rocky Mountains at 12,000 feet one time and got out and walked around the helicopter. It's an amazing experience.
And what's the most common reaction you get from passengers who've not been up in a helicopter and you take them for their first ride?
Yeah, they're always afraid. They'll tell you they're afraid of heights and all those sorts of things. But I just start real simple. Let's just go and we'll lift 2 feet off the ground. And if you don't like it, I'll put it right back down. But I've never had anybody not be excited once we actually start flying. And they go, this is fun. Even my wife, when I got my license, she watched me work really hard for about 6 or 7 months. And she said, I'm not going to be able to fly with you. I said, I understand. I went and got signed off, got my ticket. And on the way back, I got home and she says, look, I'll be darned if I'm going to let your best friend go up with you first. I want to go up with you. And so we flew out of Fort Wayne International Airport and flew over the gravel pit at first. And she says, this is kind of fun. And then it was, when can we do this again? And I wouldn't say she's my favorite passenger, but she is okay with it today.
That's a wonderful story. That's exactly what every pilot wants when they start training, is for their significant other to want to be there the whole time. Well, your passion for helicopters took another step in 2022 when you bought Enstrom. Why were you interested in this company? What are you hoping to do with it?
Well, Enstrom is an amazing company. Been around not quite as long as you said, but I think since 1956 or something along those lines. And frankly, it's what I started in. I learned in an Enstrom 280, which is a piston helicopter. And before I had my ratings, I ordered a brand new 480, which is the turbine helicopter. And Enstrom is a fabulous company that makes a great product. It's really heavy duty, old school. And they've also had a lot of owners through the years, and some pretty famous owners and not so famous owners. And then about 13 years ago, they were bought by the Chinese. And kind of the same way that Cirrus and some of the other companies thought maybe there would be a growth market over there. And frankly, the Chinese didn't really grow the company and didn't put any money into it and let them falter until the point that they filed bankruptcy about 3.5 years ago. And I just hated to see the company go away. So I stepped up and bought the company, and I had 0 employees in May of three years ago. And today we have 168, and we're back building helicopters again. We're shipping them all around the world. We're just on the final couple months of being able to ship them in the United States. We've been waiting on some FAA approvals, but those are finally coming to fruition here in the next month or two, actually.
What has been the most surprising or challenging part of that? Because you're essentially, as you alluded to, restarting production, not just taking the keys and keeping it running, but bringing a company back from basically shutdown. What's been surprising or tough about that?
Where do we start? Probably dealing with a company that really is 67, 68 years old. So there were a lot of things that we did old school, and also dealing with the FAA. The FAA, no secret, it's a challenge to do things with them today, but it was almost like starting a new company. So we had to learn new processes. We're now doing things differently than we did over the last 60 years. Some of it for the better, some of it just because we had to. But there were just a lot of bits and pieces of getting the company going again. And I didn't want just a sleepy old company. I want a forward-thinking company. And so, we're starting to put some new design into the helicopters and making them lighter and solid-state electronics and all those sorts of things.
You obviously have lots of experience managing and growing a company with Sweetwater, but Enstrom is a smaller, more manufacturing-focused company. What are the lessons you learned at Sweetwater that apply to helicopters and running Enstrom?
Well, the simple one is just always do the right thing. There are ways we could have taken shortcuts and maybe shipped helicopters a little bit faster. That's just not my style. I want to build a first-class, high-quality product, and I want to stand behind it. I want my customers. That's really why I bought the company. I want to provide the same sort of level of customer service that I would expect, and so that means getting parts out there, being available for customer service sort of questions, and ultimately for real service on the helicopters.
In your opinion, what change would have the biggest impact on general aviation businesses in the U.S.? You mentioned some of the challenges with FAA, and I'm sure there are many others. Is there a simple regulatory or infrastructure change, or is it more cultural and business case specific? What would do it to get some of these companies back thriving again in GA?
Well, I mean, I do understand the responsibility of the FAA and having oversight, and clearly we've seen some challenges in the last few years. On the other hand, I think if they got out of the way and let innovation happen, I think we would have better products, whether it's airplanes or helicopters. And so I'm not sure where the balance is, but I do think there's a lot of oversight from the FAA. And frankly, with some men and women that mean well, but they're stuck in the bureaucracy of government. And I think we all know that sometimes government gets a little heavy-handed. I don't want to get in trouble for doing this podcast today, but sometimes they get a little heavy-handed. So I just wish they'd give a little bit more grace and a little bit more respect to the engineers that are actually designing the new technologies, the new parts, so on and so forth.
So you mentioned innovation, and I couldn't agree more that the need for more of that. There's been some disruptors in the helicopter and aviation industry, or at least would-be disruptors. People like Skyrise developing a simplified flight control technology. There's a slew of eVTOL companies of various states of success promising electric air taxis. Do you think any of these will fundamentally change helicopter flying, or are they mostly overhyped right now?
Oh, I don't know. I think they will change. I mean, if we look back what's happened to helicopters or airplanes in the last 20, 30, 40 years, who would have thought we'd have gone from round gauges to solid state as an example? The same thing's going to happen, I believe, with these eVTOLs. There's about 200 companies around the world making them right now. There's a few going out of business too as they try and figure out what their business model is. But I'm sure we're going to end up with some really strong performers. It just, they have too many good things going for them, from the battery power, the being quieter, lighter, all that sort of stuff. I think eventually there will be some winners through that. And I think the government, the FAA, is figuring out how to certify them, how to make them safe and legal, so on, so forth.
So, in addition to Enstrom, you also own flight schools and FBOs at 3 airports in Indiana. You're really in aviation in a lot of different areas. So, from the flight school perspective, if I'm looking for a flight school, maybe I'm a new student pilot and I drive up to my local airport, how do I know if I'm dealing with a good business there? What should I look for?
Well, simple things from a business point of view. The place look clean? Are they organized? But more importantly, do they have good staff and people that really, in our case, and I think in most successful flight schools, it's not a matter of just helping the student get their certificate, but it's actually being there and helping them learn. You don't just learn and walk away in 40 hours. It's an ongoing process. And I think that's what's really important to me. And what we would try and offer at our schools is that we're here not just to get your ticket, but afterwards also. And as I say, it's just the beginning of your learning. Once you get your license, it's a lesson or a license to learn for the rest of your life, actually.
Yeah, that spirit of community, I think, is underrated by most people. We hear it from our customers at Sporty's Academy who come here to learn to fly. Getting the ticket is important, and many of them have goals, whether it's career or buy an airplane, but they actually want to belong to a community as well. And so it's not just punching in, doing your flight, going home. And I think that's easy to overlook. Maybe it's hard to find that on the P&L at the end of the day, but it's a really important part of a good flight school, both for longevity for the business and for the customers.
I have to tell you, that was one of the most surprising and the most amazing things to me. I love, love, love the community of aviators. And whether you're going to a small little airport or a big FBO, I just love the community of other aviation professionals and amateurs. And it's just a great, great experience to be around. Everybody's always willing to help others and give advice. And I think it's great. I love that community. I wish it was in other parts of my world.
Couldn't agree more. That's maybe one of the number one things I've learned doing this podcast is the community of aviators is, number one, fascinating and diverse and interesting, but number two, so willing to share their expertise and welcome new people. And so I always tell new student pilots, if you don't feel like you've plugged into that yet, keep trying, because it's there. And it may be the richest reward of becoming a pilot is not the certificate in your wallet, but the membership, unofficial though it may be, in that aviation community. So 100%.
Absolutely. Yep.
So if somebody wants to get into helicopters, I sometimes hear the advice, go learn to fly airplanes first and then go to helicopters. That's an easier transition. You've done both. You've seen it with the flight school you run. You've seen it with what you do in helicopters. What's your advice there if I'm considering helicopters either as a career or for fun?
Well, obviously, from a pure expense point of view, doing it on a fixed wing first and then transitioning is probably a little cheaper, just for the little less hours, that sort of thing. In my case, I didn't really care about fixed wing, so I just went right to helicopter. A helicopter is a little more expensive, so you do need the ability to pay that kind of money. But I respect both, and I have a lot of friends that did fixed wing first, and then they do the transition to get their helicopter rating, and that's somewhere between 26 to 30 hours, something like that.
And what is the part of helicopter training I should not skimp on if I'm overwhelmed by it, but I'm churning through my lessons? What is a really key part that you learned that actually comes in handy throughout your helicopter flying career I should really focus on?
I would just say being really careful with pre-flights and post-flights. It gets really easy to fly the helicopter after a while, but it also gets easy to become complacent. And, I don't want to have an incident or an accident. So I'm always being really careful doing a pre-flight and probably being a little more thorough than I need to be. And likewise, a post-flight. It's really important after you fly to make sure it comes back with all the pieces there and bearings aren't too hot and, all those sorts of things. But the flying part is the fun part, So That's what I would say. It's just the details on making sure you're flying a good, safe aircraft. You owe it to yourself, and you owe it to your friends and family members that you're flying with. The weather, of course, is always a challenge and an issue. And so, I mean, yesterday I wanted to fly, but I also saw that we were having nearly a 50 knot wind at 2,000, wind shear at 2,000 feet. I thought, well, that's not a good day to fly. So I'm much happier to be on the ground driving than in the air flying, wishing I were on the ground, as they say.
It's great advice on the pre-flight. And the one tip I would add to that is most of our flight students, one of their first lessons is a pre-flight, right? You walk around the airplane or the helicopter with the flight instructor. And I find that most students are overwhelmed about 2 minutes into that. You showed up not knowing what an aileron was, and now we're talking about, all kinds of aircraft systems. And so I often like to tell people, go back and do a more thorough pre-flight with your flight instructor, maybe 10 or 12 lessons in, when some of that makes sense, when you know what a magneto is, when you know what elevator trim really means, because feels like early on you don't know what you're really looking for, and it's easy to get in that complacency, as you mentioned. That I walked around and I looked at these pieces, but I didn't really know what I was looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember my first few flights learning to fly, and it's been 45 minutes doing a pre-flight. And again, I really didn't know what I was looking for. Although I do have to say, I found oil in a gear or metal in a gearbox one time, and that was enough to go, okay, I'm not flying this thing today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Chuck, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk business a little bit. Hey, pilots, let's be honest. Once you pass your check ride, flying isn't just about checklists and maneuvers. It's about making smart decisions and adjusting when things don't go as planned. That's where VFR and IFR Mastery from Pilot Workshops come in. Every month, you'll get brand new flying scenarios, one for VFR pilots and one for IFR pilots, designed to challenge your decision-making skills in a safe, risk-free environment. Led by Pilot Workshops' award-winning team of flight instructors, these scenarios focus on practical flying tips and real-world strategies that make you a more confident, more prepared pilot. Whether it's handling tricky weather, navigating unexpected airspace issues, or making tough go, no-go calls, Mastery helps sharpen the skills you actually use in the cockpit. It's more than just reading an article or watching a video. It's a multi-step, interactive experience that even includes a community section where you can talk with other pilots about their decision-making process. I've been a panelist for Mastery, and I can tell you it's one of the most educational and fun experiences of my aviation career. So I invite you to join thousands of other pilots who rely on these expert insights to stay sharp. Sign up for a free trial of VFR or IFR Mastery today at pilotworkshops.com and take your flying to the next level. That's pilotworkshops.com. Now, back to Pilot's Discretion. We are back with Chuck Surack, who built an incredible business at Sweetwater over the last 4 decades. And Chuck, in my opinion, the thing that really sets Sweetwater apart, and I say this as a customer, and something that is a model for us here at Sporties, is your focus on the customer. And now, saying you're customer focused is boring to the point of cliche these days, but you guys really do it. So how do you make that the culture of a business and not just kind of a buzzword on a banner?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's something that is very important to us, just like I know it is at Sporties. I mean, I've been a Sporties customer also for a long time. In our case, I tell everybody they're empowered. I tell every employee, whether you're a receptionist, whether you're in the warehouse, I don't care where you are, you're empowered to do the right thing for the customer. And you will never get in trouble for doing the right thing for the customer. If you don't do enough, you'll get in more trouble. So I'd much rather, if we need to replace a keyboard or a guitar, let's just replace it. It makes it a pretty simple process for the customer. They feel good about it. It's not a big deal for us. We turn around and sell that instrument as a used instrument or a demo later. And I just want to do the right thing for the customer. And so that becomes just ingrained in our culture from the top down. And I've never reprimanded anybody for doing too much for a customer. I've been a little frustrated when they want to protect my dollars and not do enough for the customer. But we train for it. We have what we call the perfect conversation. We don't negotiate the price until the selling's done. And we want the selling to be that we're the right place to buy it. It's the right product for the customer, on and on and on. And we just always want to do the right thing for the customer. Part of that was me growing up as a Boy Scout. And a Boy Scout learns to be trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, clean, brave, and reverent. Scout law. And, that first one of just being trustworthy and loyal, it's what we've always tried to do with our customers. I'm not interested in whether we're going to make money on this particular transaction or even the next one. I just want to do the right thing. So over time, I get the repeat business, I get the referral business, and I get a customer for life. And that's really what our whole model has been based on for 46 years now.
It's such great advice for anybody running a business. Maybe sounds cliche, as I said, but very few people actually walk the walk. I still remember Hal Shevers, Sporty's founder, saying years ago when a customer service associate here said, "Well, Hal, I was just trying to save you some money because I think the customer's ripping us off." And he said, "I don't pay you to save me money. I pay you to take care of the customer," which was maybe a dramatic way of saying it, but really hit home for me that, yeah, that is the ultimate goal.
I've heard that same thing, and it just drives me crazy. And I get the point, the employee's trying to save us money, and maybe, but what I want to do is make sure that I'm not putting policies in place for that half or 1% of the customer that is abusing us. I want to take care of the other 99 or 99.5% that are good people doing the right thing.
Absolutely. So I think I saw somewhere that Sweetwater sells about 1,000 guitars a day, which is an incredible stat. And almost every one of those you guys check before it goes out. And I've seen this doing the tour at your operation where they take it out. Tell us about that process and why you do that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's over 1,000 guitars a day. And where do they go? I mean, I guess they're in people's closets or under their beds or something. But, it started many, many years ago. Again, I wanted to make that experience out of the box to be great for our customers. And a lot of our guitars, or almost all of our guitars, are handmade. And so on Monday, Mary may have a bad day, or Bill on Friday has a bad day. And so some of them came through with some quality control issues where they weren't quite the quality that I wanted to sell. They might have a hair in the finish, or maybe the pickups were installed a little crooked. And so I wanted to make sure out of the box, it was a great instrument if you bought it from Sweetwater. And so we run every guitar that's more than $400, which is most of them. Every guitar goes through a 55-point check where we check everything on that guitar and make sure that it's going to be just fabulous out of the box. And we've gone from not selling guitars to today we're the largest guitar seller in the world, which just blows my mind, especially selling a mail order. You would think you'd have to touch that guitar and feel it, and yet customers trust us all over the world to buy instruments from us.
Does anyone in aviation do this level of service? Any fractional jet company or an airline or a flight school? And I'm not trying to call out anybody, but is there anybody you've done business with in the aviation world that seems to get this?
Well, I'm seriously, I'm not blowing smoke up your skirt, if you will. But what I loved about Sporties, and we do the same thing at Sweetwater, you spend so much time educating customers and educating them about products and how to use the products. And, I read your iPad stuff all the time. And we do the same sort of thing. How do you use the keyboard with the guitar, with the recording equipment? And so that's frankly why I've been so loyal to Sporties through the years. But it's tough in the aviation business. Everybody's scrapping it to stay alive, and they're tough businesses. You can't make a lot of money in the aviation world. So I'm not aware of many other companies that are doing that extra stuff, frankly, the way Sweetwater's and Sporties does.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. I wasn't fishing for that, but I'll take it. So how did you do it at Sweetwater? Because it's not just about doing it right, but it's about doing that while growing, which I think is often at odds, or it seems like it's at odds with each other. You grew a business to a tremendous level, but kept that culture and kept those standards. And often growth seems to kill a company. We see this with lots of them. How do you do that? How do you maintain that as you grow and double, triple, quadruple the size of a company?
Sure. Train, and great people. I mean, so we have what we call Sweetwater University. And so for 13 weeks, sales engineers every day are learning how to have relationships with customers, how to do products, all that sort of thing before they ever talk to a customer. And we're just constantly educating our employees as well as educating our customers. And, we've grown from my VW bus 46 years ago. Today, there's 2,800 employees. We'll do 1.8 billion dollars of business this year, which just floors me. And, I'm humbled every day when I think about it, but it's just always doing a little bit better than yesterday. I don't believe you can stand still. I have a philosophy: you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And I don't want to get worse. So I'm always trying to get better. And that's called Kaizen, the Japanese term for continual improvement. And so that's what we do at our company.
Yeah, I would also give you the compliment that I know you and a lot of your senior team at Sweetwater over the years, real practitioners of hands-on leadership. I remember talking to some of your folks about COVID, working in the warehouse when the only people in the warehouse was you and your family and a couple of senior executives out there pulling
Yep.
all-nighters to ship packages, which I think that's also part of it. That culture is not what you talk about, it's what you do every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if I'm running a small flight school or I'm starting up a small aviation business, what are those most important lessons? Certainly the customer focus, certainly having the high standards, but for a new or smaller company, what are the most important things you would tell that new entrepreneur and trying to start their flight school or their business?
Well, if you're talking flight school, it would be safety, safety, safety. And then it really is getting your arm around that customer and getting them to understand um, that you're a great place to learn and that you're going to be there to support them long after they get their rating. Um, but I would just say safety, safety, safety.
All right, Chuck, we always end Pilot's Discretion with a ready to copy segment. So I'll throw out some questions on a range of topics, and I'll probably go broad here. And you read back with your quick answer. Are you ready to copy?
Absolutely.
What is the most important skill to learn in order to be a safe helicopter pilot?
To be prepared, to plan, and just have always be in control.
What is something helicopter pilots learn that airplane pilots maybe never have to consider?
I don't know, but I love that I can land anywhere. I don't need 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet. I'll just land in somebody's backyard or a basketball court or a church parking lot if I'm having a problem.
Yeah, I would say that might be it. That in an airplane, you get pretty blasé about, well, the runway's a runway, but every set down in a helicopter is a different surface usually.
Absolutely.
So where is your favorite place to land a helicopter? You mentioned Gulf of Mexico, Rockies. Where's the best place you've landed, on airport or off?
My favorite place and best place is at my house. I'm very fortunate that I can just walk out my front door and go out to my garage where I keep my helicopter. And you can't do that easily in an airplane unless you have a lot of land, I guess. But, I have just a little bit bigger than a basketball court that I land the thing and take it off. And I just love being able to do that.
You mentioned the important role that Boy Scouts played in your life. What skill do you learn as a Boy Scout that serves you well as a pilot?
Well, I think I'm pretty good at following rules. I learned that as a scout, and of course, there's a lot of rules in aviation. But again, I think as we talked about, I love the aviators community, and that's that being loyal and helpful and friendly and courteous. I learned all that in scouts, and it's very applicable in the airplane world.
Does flying make you better at business?
I'm not sure about that. Does flying make me better at business? I try to be really careful when I'm flying. I am flying. I turn my business hat off and I just want to be the best pilot I can be. And so I am sure that focus that I do when I'm flying, I can turn around and apply when I'm in business, but I try not to mix the two.
That's excellent advice. I've heard many, many entrepreneurs say that who are pilots, when they get in an airplane or helicopter, some of them even have a physical ritual where it's like, I'm taking off my business hat, I'm putting on my pilot hat. All the stuff at the office does not exist for the next 2 hours.
That is correct.
I think that's important for safety, but also important for having fun.
Yeah.
What is the most important trait you look for when hiring a new employee?
I'm looking for fire in the belly. We're in a business that's not, we don't have to have degrees and that sort of thing, but I want someone that is ethical and that I can tell they want to get better. They want to improve. They have fire in their belly. And so that's way more important to me than what piece of paper they have or what background they have.
All right. A couple of questions about music, because you're a passionate musician. You've done a lot over the years. So if I'm listening to music, what's one way to judge the music producer? Not the performers, but the actual recording I'm hearing. What should I listen for?
Wow. I've been fortunate to be around some pretty successful producers. Probably one of the most famous ones is Quincy Jones, who produced everything that Michael Jackson did and just all kinds of artists. And he just has a way to bring out the sound of the artist in a way that the artist didn't know they could bring the sound out. A producer can really produce that artist in ways that the musician would just never do. And so I love the sound of a Quincy Jones production or an Al Schmidt production or many of the producers that I've known. And they just bring a clarity to the music that maybe the musician wouldn't normally have.
You started out in that producing audio engineering world, working with some big names in music throughout the years. So who is your favorite musician to work with?
Oh my gosh. I've been so fortunate. I've been around a lot of great musicians, less of them from a production point of view, but more helping them with their equipment and all that. And a couple of my favorites, they're old now, but Stevie Wonder was a customer and gave me credits on one of his albums. Kenny Rogers was a good friend when he was still alive, and just so many amazing musicians around the country, around the world.
So, in an era of AI music where I can get on Spotify and hear slop that was not actually created by a human being, why is it that live performance is still so powerful? People spending $1,200 to see Taylor Swift or flying across the world to see their favorite band.
There's just an energy that happens with a live performer on stage where they're spontaneously communicating with you. Music is the universal language, and live music on stage just does something to your body, to the fiber of you get goosebumps on your arms and on your back hearing live music. You're not going to hear out of AI. At least I don't think so, for a long time.
So you play saxophone, I know, and have for a long time. Describe the perfect saxophone solo. What does it feel like for the person playing it?
It's a great way to communicate. And so I'm not much of a singer. I can sing well enough, but I'm not much of a singer. But when I play my saxophone, I feel like I'm really singing the song to the person. And there've been some amazing saxophone solos. One of my favorites is an old artist who died about 15 years ago named Boots Randolph. Boots Randolph had a hit called Yakety Sax, which is that real fast song you hear when people are rolling down the hill and all that. But his other big hit was Brenda Lee, Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. And when that solo comes on every Christmas, I just smile and smile hearing Boots play Rocking Around the Christmas Tree.
And who is your favorite saxophone player of all time?
Oh, man, probably Boots Randolph. But, there's a lot of great. David Sanborn, he was a friend who just passed away. He was a great sax player. There's so many amazing sax players out there today.
All right, Chuck, our last question is always the same. You have one final flight, and we want to know, what are you flying and where are you going?
Woo. I fly an Airbus H-130 helicopter. It's a 7-passenger helicopter that they fly out in Las Vegas and Hawaii, doing lots of tours. And mine's, equipped as a VIP helicopter. But I would be flying that thing anywhere. I love flying it. It's an easy helicopter to fly, but yet it's big and powerful, and I can land anywhere, and it feels really safe. And I fly to Florida every winter. That's probably what I would do. It's about a 7-hour trip to fly from Fort Wayne, Indiana down to Naples, Florida. We'll make a couple fuel stops along the way. And that's always just a joy, flying over the Smoky Mountains and then over Georgia and then down. Of course, Florida's a long state when you start at the top and go all the way to the bottom. But that'd be my favorite trip.
Chuck, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks, John. I really have enjoyed it today.
Thanks for listening to Pilot's Discretion, brought to you by Sporties, training and equipping pilots worldwide for over 60 years. For more episodes and today's show links, visit sporties.com/podcast. I'm John Zimmerman. We'll see you next time on Pilot's Discretion.